doing here this morning, if it's the first time you're here, we're not only going to look at business or leadership content, we're also going to try and uplift you personally. Right? So, and the content that you'll receive this morning is actually applicable not only in your workplace, but throughout your whole life. So you can bear that in mind as we go through it. We want to provide leadership and business tools that create lasting value. So we don't want you to leave here saying, I had a nice time, and not have value in the future, and actually being able to use this in your workplace as well as any other aspect of your life. So that's our intention. We also want to be generous, so sowing in squares and reaping in circles. So in ancient times, farmers actually sowed their block of land, but they only reaped in a circle, so leaving the corners, right, so that the poor can come and actually help themselves to the produce that they've grown in the corner. So we want to do the same. We want to get this content out to as many people as possible, and that's our heart. We want to be generous with this content. So it's great to see the amount of people here. Just to note as well on that, we travel Africa with this content as well. So we're actually taking it into our continent, not only our country and not only our city. And that's our heart for it. Next slide, please. So our agenda today is going to be personal introductions. So this part is really for us to get to know one another on a little bit of a deeper level. The second agenda item is going to be crucial conversations. This is our topic. So this is the actual topic that you are going to actually be equipped with a tool that you can go and use to actually have conversations with people, or high-stakes conversations with people in your workplace, but also in any other aspects of your life, i.e. perhaps your wife or something like that, where there's important things to discuss, right? The last agenda item is going to be a grid that will give you, or a tool to help you to solve issues. And we're going to do that practically in our groups, and hopefully that will equip you with something, or a recipe, for a lack of a better term, for you to actually solve issues either in your workplaces, your teams, or even beyond that. So next slide, please, there. So the first part of our agenda is going to be, and you can go to your pages 4 in your workbooks, is going to be personal introductions. So I want to say that we are not human doings, right? We are human beings. So many times in our workplaces, we are very focused on productivity. We just want to get to the deadline. We want to actually get to the next business goal. But ultimately, we are still human beings. And sometimes we just live for that productive sense, but don't sit down and actually get to know one another on a little bit of a deeper level. And this is going to set the scene for the rest of the day. And you'll see, it might be a little bit vulnerable, to actually share some of these things, but share what you're comfortable with, but do partake. And I think, it's a very good thing for us to actually get a deeper connection with one another. And I know there's some business teams that's actually sitting together, and that will, knit your team together, and also some other people, so please take part in that. So what we're going to be doing is, you'll see on your page 4, we're going to actually list 3 things from a high point perspective, as well as from a challenging or a prayer point perspective. So what that 3 things are is in different aspects of your life. So it's going to be personal, professional, as well as spiritual. So an example of professional would be, I closed that big deal that I've been working on for the last 3 months, last week. So that will be a good high point, I would say, for a professional side. From a personal point of view, it could be something like, my kids have done very well at school. I'm very proud of them. We got the reports, and it's going very well. From a spiritual point of view, you might have been in church last week and had a great encounter with God, and He spoke to you in a special way. And those 3 things would be great for you to actually list a high point, but then also some challenging points or prayer points. And even if you only want to list one of those, that's fantastic. So we're going to take some time now. So if you would like to just, on page 4, write your name down in the columns, in the 3 aspects of life. We'll take a couple of minutes to do that now, and then we'll go further from there. Cool. Excellent. So what we'll do now is we're going to allow for some time for you to actually, each of you at the table, share with your table what you've written down. So you'll see we have 2 pages, page 4 and 5, for this exercise in your book. So perhaps, listen to what the people around the table are saying. Write down their names, write down their prayer requests, and maybe pray for them after this, right? So we're going to allow 3 minutes each for feedback around the table. You'll be facilitated by your table host. They'll keep a timer. The reason for that is just to honor everybody's time, so that everybody gets a chance to actually say something. And please do participate. So we're going to allow about 25 minutes now for each of you to give some feedback around the table. Good.
Great. I trust you had an opportunity to catch up and where everyone is at. So we now get to our topic for this morning. So I want to encourage you, why not get the book? It's a guy called Patrick Lencioni. He wrote this New York Times bestseller, Crucial Conversations. And I think it's a very good investment. And I don't know if you've read any of his books, but it's very easy to read. He always writes his books in the form of a parable, which is quite fun to see how they work it out. So conversations. So I don't know if you've ever had some crucial conversations. I know this is very theoretical what we're doing this morning. You never had some high-stakes, difficult conversations with anyone, but just hypothetically, if those things happen. If you ever look at research actually shows that, how many doctors or people actually die on the operating table because, the nurses, for instance, sees things that's not right, but they can't say anything. They keep quiet. That's why, I don't know if you've ever gone for an operation, that's why they have to mark your foot or your hand. Otherwise, they can operate on the wrong foot or the wrong hand. And in manufacturing, they found if they worked out the amount of cost, money it costs companies because people see things but they can't speak up. We had that one example a couple of years ago of the one Asian airline where the co-pilot saw things that the pilot was doing wrong but just kept quiet. Couldn't say anything because of the honor-shame culture, couldn't speak up. So what we need is we all need to learn how to have these difficult conversations with people. So firstly, conversations are the start of new possibilities. So it's important to have conversations because otherwise, we won't live in relational health with one another. So one of the biggest challenges you face as a business leader is to have difficult conversations. Have you ever had a difficult conversation with an employee or a vendor or a partner or someone like that? And really the health and the quality of relationships is the ability to navigate through these conversations. So we want to help you to get a tool, to get a framework of how do we deal with these things. Because without learning how to have a healthy and a productive conversations, your problem won't get solved. I think one of the biggest lies is time heals everything. Time heals nothing if you don't intervene, if you don't put some things into place. So what is a crucial conversation? It's really a discussion between two or more parties where the stakes are high, opinions vary, and emotions are strong. I mean, does that describe maybe anything that you are a little bit familiar with? So what we have is some topics that we need to have crucial conversations about. Is firstly, maybe you need to confront a business partner about them not meeting the responsibilities. Calling a client to talk about an overdue invoice. I know that's very theoretical. Yeah. Getting the whole runaround and this and that, and it's, it's the system. And this one Canadian friend of mine shouts, but change the system, Confronting a boss about a promised but undelivered promotion. Talking to an employee about their lousy attitude. There are some things that's very gray. Yes? It's easier to look at performing or not performing, but now when we start to look at the softer things like a bad attitude, how do you deal with a bad attitude? Maybe they say, no, I'm not a morning person. Okay? You never know. Talking to a spouse about intimacy or finances. Talking to a sibling about your parents' inheritance. We recently had conversations like that in our family with my parents. I was saying, my parents actually there was lots of issues with their inheritance. I said, why don't we do it different with this generation? Why don't we all sit together and just discuss the will now? Then there's no surprises. Best thing I could have ever done. There were a lot of surprises, So we could just sort it out up front. Let's just be honest. Let's talk about these things. Asking a friend to repay a loan. You've loaned them something, you've helped them something, and now you're waiting for, it's like it's suddenly they're doing you a favor by just returning the thing you gave them. Okay. dealing with a rebellious teenager, if you've got children, or confronting visitation issues with an ex-spouse. Yes, these are some very difficult things. So we want to learn how to do these things in a very healthy way, because when it comes to conflict, we actually and the emotions are running high, we actually respond in one of two ways. So it's either verbal attacks or silence. Hey, it's those old TVs. There's picture, but there's no sound. Hey, so which one do you fall into? Do you attack verbally, or do you just rather give the silent treatment? Hey, Afrikaans we say stil stapler. Hey, is that right? So, in between these two extremes, we want to try and find a productive conversation. Isn't it amazing how often when there's conflict, it's like playing tennis. The whole idea about conflict is you don't want to play tennis against one another. You want to try and both get on the one side and play doubles against the issue. Yes? The problem is we usually start fighting one another and we forget all about the issue. And then that whole thing starts to morph into another problem and another problem. And eventually you are 5 arguments down the line and you're not even talking about the very thing that you started with. So we have to learn how to do these very things. We have to learn how to do it in a healthy way. So the skills that we're going to cover in Crucial Conversations will help you to have constructive dialogue, to get what we call a pool of meaning. That you can put the issue in the pool, and instead of saying you are, you start things like I feel. When you do this, I feel, and then give the opportunity to say how they feel. Instead of, becoming a mobile court, becoming judge, jury, and executioner before the other person has even had an opportunity to speak. So again, I think every day we face these challenges. Every day we face, the challenge of how are we going to deal with conflict in a healthier way. Because again, we have to understand, and it depends on how you grew up. I know in our family, I remember when my wife first came to meet my parents, she was afterwards like, this is the end of those relationships and things. She was like, I'm like, what do you mean? She said, no, we were just talking. She thought we were having a full-on fight. I'm like, no, we were just discussing something, okay? But then, when I come to, again, her family, there's the proverbial, I would say a whole circus full of elephants under this carpet. And everyone is sort of, their shoulders are, chafing as they're walking, on the side of the wall to get around this carpet with this elephant over it. But no one talks about these things. No one says anything. Everyone just smiles and it's all fine. So, again, depends on your background. Are you more the elephant in the room? Hey? I love this one clip where this one guy's got this massive, this big nail in his head. And he can't understand why people are looking at him strange. And when they tell him, he's like, no, but I can't see it. Hey. So we all have a background, and we need to understand our bias. So is your bias to just lash out? Okay? Or is your bias just to keep quiet? Neither of those are good. So we want to try and find, how do we take the issue, put it in a pool, and let's say, I feel this and I feel that. And let's talk a bit around those things and try and keep it to the issue. And not go back to, because what we classically do in like personal relationships, you start to use those wonderful things that's very helpful to say, you just like your mother, and you just like your father, and yeah, you just like that other client, and so we start to project all our past things on people, and it doesn't solve anything. So we want to try and do this in a healthy way. So if you have a look at page 8, just a few seconds, just sit and consider there. When challenges arise in your relationships, and that could be personal, professional, in any way, just rate yourself there. Do you tend to avoid them? Do you face them and handle them poorly? Afterwards, like, I could have done that better. I could have said that better. Or do you face them and handle them well? So let's take 30 seconds just to do a honest reflection on those very things. Okay, good. So what path do you usually take? Should we put up hands? In which three groups we usually find ourselves? Are you the avoider? Hey? Let's just try and ignore it. Who's the avoider? Okay. We're not recording you. We won't tell anyone. Okay, your secret is safe with us. Okay? So just avoiding things, has it ever helped? Has it ever fixed? I mean, for the moment it seems better, but it becomes just more and more tense. Hey, and the problem with the avoider is then you start having those fights in the shower. Then he'll say this, she'll say that, I say that, this, you know. I don't know if you ever heard that story of the guy who his car broke down, and as he wanted to quickly change the tire on his car, and as he goes, he realizes he doesn't have a wheel spanner. You know, and now it's like, where's my wheel spanner? So now he thought, what am I going to do? Because I can't change this wheel. And he saw from a distance, he said, oh, there's a house there. He thought, let me go to the house. And maybe just ask the person, can I just use your wheel spanner just to change my wheel? Great. So he starts walking off to this house. But along the way, he starts to think, but what if this guy thinks I'm a criminal? And what if this person doesn't want to give me their wheel spanner? And all of these things, and he's sort of having this massive conversation and dialogue with himself about how this person might respond to their request. And of course, gets to the person, knock on the door, and as the person opens the door, he says, man, leave it, forget it, I don't want your wheel spanner, you know? So that's often what the avoider does, hey? Fights in your head. Maybe you say, okay, I don't avoid it, but when I confront, I usually, overdo it, I'm definitely in that category. And handling it poorly, and afterwards like, oh man, why did I say it like this? I should have said it this way, and those things. So we want to learn to not react, but rather respond. Or do you face them and handle them well? And again, can I say, you should not be the assessor of that. Okay. So it should be the other person that should assess. I know in our first few years of marriage, we used to do a thing we call ken mekaar. I don't know what's that in English. Get to know one another. So usually Monday mornings we would sit and we would have breakfast. And I say, okay, now, what did I do this week that you did not like? But I can't defend myself. And then vice versa. And I tell you, we all have this $2,000 a minute lawyer that's suit up, ready to defend me, So to sit there and to listen, to these things and not able to defend myself, honestly, that's probably some of the hardest pain I ever had to endure in my life. So in the same way, we have to learn to, again, just let the other person assess. Because if I think I'm this way, but that person says, no, you're not, then you're not. So anyway, just that's for free. So let's have a look at how we're going to work on these very things. So how do we develop ourselves in terms of crucial conversations? So if you go on page 9, firstly, we're going to say, let's start by defining your motive. So what's really rooted, what's the problem that you're facing? Why do you want to sort this thing out? What is the real motive behind this conversation that you need to have? Firstly, to ask, is my motive right? So why do I need to have this conversation? Is it to punish the other person or blame them? Again, I tell you, I think we're all very good at throwing others under the bus. Hey, and we have to learn to actually to really go and assess firstly, before I have this conversation, what is really the root or the motive behind this? So I want you to try and think of some crucial conversations. Maybe you've got one that you haven't done that well. Maybe there's one that that you need to have. So how are you going to have this conversation? Really ask yourself, what is the motive behind this? Firstly, assess yourself in terms of that. If you dig a little deeper, you'll find you're actually after something much nobler, hopefully. And then we want to try and get to step 2, where we start to share clarify a shared goal. So the question is, what's my motive? Okay, this is the problem I'm facing. Now let's clarify some goal or outcome that we want from this conversation. Okay, which is not just I'm right and you wrong. Okay, that's usually not a good goal. The goal is to say, if this is the issue we're facing, how can we, together sort out this goal? Then we want to try and go to step 3. If you have a look on page 10, is actually to try and think. It's like stories are our assumptions about people. So often we all have a story about someone. That person, that client, we all have this narrative in our head about someone. And the problem is, if that narrative is not healthy, we're going to project that narrative onto the issue. So we want to try and make sure what is really the narrative. What are my assumptions about why this person is doing what they're doing? For instance, this person keeps coming late. Don't know if that's ever happened. So immediately you can lash out, and you grew up and say if someone is late, they're disrespecting, all of those type of things. But maybe find out why. There might be a very good reason, and there might be something that you can help with there. What is the story I've been telling myself about them or about this issue? Could this be fiction, or maybe I'm just believing a lie? Because again, we all have filters through which we see the world. And what story would God or love rather have me play in this role? So how can I, again, the golden rule, how can I treat others the way I want to be treated? Because surprise, very soon, very likely, it's going to be the other way around, and someone will need to have this conversation with you. So why not try and sort it out in a way that you would like someone to sort it out with you? And then fourthly, we want to create and restore safety. So how will I react if the person gets aggressive or withdraws? How will I do this? How will I deal with those things? How can I replace defensiveness with curiosity? So if someone becomes quite offensive, something we're not good at is we don't ask too many questions. I think we've always got lots of answers, but we don't have a lot of questions. And we have to learn the skill of like a detective. So we have to learn to ask more questions and try and clarify and understand. So is this what you mean? Because I think you've probably found when I often say something, I need to check, is this what you heard? Because so often what I say and what people hear are very different things. And how do I restore safety in the conversation? So again, our default is to fight one another. Our default is to, you're a terrible client, and you guys, your industry, you always pay late, you do all of these type of things. Or we say, hey, our goal is, obviously, we have cash flow, we have things we have to sort out, talk through some, that's a shared goal that we want to have. We want to have a healthy relationship. We want to build on these things. How do we do those things? Hey, here are some helpful ways how to create and restore safety in a conversation. If you see the other person responding in stress. Now again, different people respond to stress in a different way. Okay, some people respond with stress by being angry, by being defensive. Some people just keep quiet. But you can see if looks could kill. Hey, if you feel yourself getting worked up or angry, take a deep breath or a quick break, and just take a moment instead of just reacting to that thing. Again, replace defensiveness with curiosity. So try to understand, okay, is this what you mean? Could this be the reason? Or explain to me, why do you act in this way? Why do you do things in this way? Respect what they feel and hear what they are saying through validation, even if you disagree. Like I say, I can see how this would have made you feel this way. Empathy. So, okay, understand that you would feel this way and respond or react in this way. Focus on the points of agreement, not disagreement. There are actually some things that we can agree upon. So when you have these conversations, what things do we agree? Is there some things? And try and build on that. Make tentative guesses at what they might be feeling, especially when they've gone silent. This is where the avoider. Say, okay, now you explain to me now, what do you feel now? And, what are you experiencing right now? Don't assume there are only two ways to solve the problem. Step back and be open to alternative things. I think what I found quite helpful is saying, okay, let's reverse the roles. What would you say to me in this situation? How would you deal with this situation if this is what you were facing? So these are just some things that we can consider around that. So again, this is something we need to grow in. It's something we need to develop, because we want to get to healthy conversations. Because we know what it's like to have unhealthy conversations, and we know the fallout. We know of people that don't talk, family members that don't talk to one another till their deathbeds, because of. And was it really worth it? We so often know of these. I remember there's one teacher at school used to say to me, "Never say fountain, I won't drink from you again." So you might have a very strong and a hard conversation with a client or someone, but it's amazing how things can work out later in life, and you might be facing that person again. Yes, you might be needing that person later. So we need to think a bit more future-wise with these conversations. That what if things change, and if I see this person again somewhere, for the sake of that, let's try and rather resolve this as far as we can in a peaceful way. Otherwise, often it's like, if we live in the city, now you've got an issue with someone, and now you go to the mall, and you're in the grocery store, and as you come around the corner, there's that person. And then you make a quicker, moonwalk like Michael Jackson out, And then as you go to the other counter, there's that other person. And eventually you can't go to the shops anymore because there's all these issues and all these weird relationships. I know you know nothing what I'm talking about. But it's again, we have to consider the future. We have to consider that things often play out very different than we think. This client might be your boss one day. This client or this difficult person might be a key person for you somewhere to get some deal done. So again, for the sake of the relationship, for the sake of the future, rather be wiser, because you will never regret, putting a little bit more effort into those things. Okay, good. So let's put this to practice on page 11. What is the story? So first question, that you have been telling yourself about how you generally handle conflict conversations. What new narrative will help you better engage in future crucial conversations? So maybe just take a minute with that. The first two questions: what type of leader do you want to function as? And how can the answer to this question help you to become clear on a noble motive heading into crucial conversations? So take how much time, Albert? A few minutes for question 1 and 2. So just have a look at these and really try and be honest with yourself. Have a crucial conversation with yourself firstly. Hey? So how do you usually handle conflict? And then how do you actually want to handle that? So let's just take some time to do that, and then we'll get into the next questions. Great. If you've done that, go to page 12. The next three questions. So if you can answer them, we'll give you a few more minutes for that. Okay, great. So I want to ask the table host, so now to discuss these questions, just to facilitate a conversation around some of these things. And yeah, we'll give you some time for that. Great. So again this morning, I think we're just trying to get you to think in a different way. And again, I want to encourage you, get the book, read it, try and look through this grid before you have another crucial conversation. So far, what have we said? We said either you are the avoider and just say nothing, try and avoid those things, or you are the one person army that comes in all guns blazing, and after you've destroyed everything, say, okay, how do you feel about these things? So we're somewhere in between these two spaces. So we have to firstly understand your bias. Hey, the greatest knowledge is to know thyself, said someone once. So it's very important to know yourself, and maybe to go to another colleague or a friend or someone and say, what do you think? What am I more like? Which one of these ways? And again, maybe let that be your first crucial conversation, to not lose it and defend and things, but to hear what some other one says. Interesting, we say the mistake that most of us make in a crucial conversation is we believe we have to choose between telling the truth and keeping a friend. Isn't that the reason why we often don't want to? We could even say maybe losing a job or losing an opportunity or all of these type of things. But in the end, it's actually not fun. If there's all these unresolved issues and, it becomes like a minefield. Yes? It's like everywhere you put your foot, there's a potential to have your foot shot off. We don't want to live in an environment like that. We have an environment where we want to have unfiltered debate, where we can actually speak about these things and solve it because we've got a bigger goal at play. So again, I want to encourage you, think through some conversations maybe you've had or that you want to have, and use this grid. I think after a few of those, and as you've gone through this grid, and yes? One of our biggest challenges is that very thing. So I have an expectation of you, but I don't communicate it with you. And then you do not respond in a way that I like or that I expected you to respond, and then I'm upset. And I become, again, passive-aggressive or overbearing dictator, freaking out and all of those type of things. So we have to learn that if I cannot have an expectation of someone until I've communicated it and we've agreed upon these things. Just interesting, if you look in your extra credit, positive emotions such as joy, excitement, and satisfaction typically arise when we experience, surpasses our expectation. For instance, you're expecting to get this small little gift, but you end up getting something much greater. That's usually a wonderful expectation, when our expectations are exceeded. But then also we have negative emotions such as disappointment, frustration, or sadness when our expectations fall short. And can I say, for most of us, we often find us in that place. So we have this big expectation, and then things don't turn out the way we wanted, but we've never communicated our expectation. We never spoke about these things. So the whole idea of crucial conversations is to match our expectations with the other person so that it's more realistic in terms of those very things. So we need to pay attention to our emotions so we can gain a deeper understanding of our expectations and use this insight to navigate difficult situations more effectively. There are many different definitions, and this is what we say, the big buzzword EQ, or emotional intelligence, as we want to grow in these things and be better at working with people, on an everyday basis. Good. So I'm going to hand over to Martin to help us through the issue section.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Now we get to the real work. Resolving issues is something I'm extremely passionate about. Being in leadership myself for many years, I've had to learn the hard way. Avoiding it, all the stuff that George was talking about, it being too aggressive, and then you find yourself in various situations, because not every problem that you have to solve is going to follow the exact perfect, call it, way. But what I love about what this gives us, and this tool that you can use, is going to give you a bit of a structure to seriously help you resolve some issues. So for example, as leaders, we often, just to see behind me here, as leaders, we often spend too much time admiring our problem instead of solving it. Just think of, maybe you've had a conflict with a friend, and you are the one you avoid conflict. So now, like George said, sometimes this stuff now starts to really build up, and eventually you have all bad thoughts and your friend is not responding, and now you're starting to harbor offense. And it can really start consuming you so much that your friend is unaware. Or you're in a serious boardroom situation, and there's a problem that we need to solve. But because you maybe in your personal capacity don't have the answer, and you feel that you are now failing, you don't raise the issue. And there's this kind of underlying current the whole time, but it's like the proverbial elephant in the room. What is very important is that we firstly do everything we can to resolve the issue. But what also is important is that you learn, and we learn how to take a problem. We might not solve it, but we move it along. Because leaving it where it is, it can get worse and worse and worse. But by just moving it along, you might find that for a period it needs to just sit there, because the problem is maybe quite multifaceted. It has various solutions, but you've been able to identify the first one. You resolve it, it gets to a point, it has to mature a bit, you work on it again, then you move it along. But the main thing is, don't let it be unresolved. That's the main issue. So we're going to go into a time of solution. I'm going to talk you through it. I am going to come up more than once. You might sit here, if this is your first time doing one of these, you're going to say, but gee, why is there such a time thing here? I think this is another secret, I believe, that helps us with resolving issues, is that when we have too much time sometimes to think about an issue, we don't really get to the root of the issue. But when we are kind of a little bit under time pressure to say, okay, but what's the real issue here? You go straight to the issue. So you are going to feel like you're a bit under time pressure, but I'm going to talk you through it now. I think also, just before we go there, sometimes it's so hard to see the solution that's right in front of us without the help of others. And don't we all sometimes fail with that? Because pride prevents us from asking for help, And Proverbs, I just want to read 2 verses from Proverbs. I love the book of Proverbs. It really helps us so often with just leading ourselves and even leading wherever we are. But Proverbs 12:15 says, "The way of the fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man or woman listens to advice." Listen to others. The other one is Proverbs 15:22 says, "Without consultation or advice, plans are frustrated, but with many counselors they succeed." How cool is that? There are many counselors around your table now. And you are going to go into a time where you're actually going to now be exposed to what we call group coaching, where you can sit in a group. And if you think of your workplace, you're a team. If you think of your family, there's more than one around the table. If you think of whatever situation you are in, there's a team, whether it's the finance team, the leadership team, the head of departments meeting, the prefects, you're a team. You can do group coaching. So there's going to be 4 steps that we're going to follow. Step 1 and 2 is actually together, step as one process, and I'll talk you through that now. Then there's a step 3 and then a step 4. And step 4 has 4 sub-steps, all right? So, but take a step back now. So step 1, we're going to give you some time, about 5 minutes, and your table hosts will help you, we'll time you, where you can now go through step 1 and 2 in your book. And I'm going to give you an example of that. And in that, you now, as the individual, is going to get an opportunity to identify the most pressing issue that you're dealing with. And then step 2 is just to go step back one step. This is all around crucial conversations. So the issue you really want to write down here is maybe what is this issue that you're dealing with that's maybe that you haven't dealt with? A crucial conversation you haven't had yet that you should be having. All right? Put it down. Yes, are you going to be vulnerable? Potentially. I want to say you're in a safe space. You're among friends. This is about it. Let's put it out there. Let's write it down. The second step of that is for you to actually just dig a little bit deeper and start to clarify. Maybe you understand the root problem. So, for example, if I had to use an example, so let's say, give a brief background, to say, listen, a friend of yours asked for a loan. All right? They were retrenched. So you took money from your savings that you were allocated for a family trip, and you helped this friend out. In the meantime, this friend gets a job again. Everything is going well. They're blessed. They bought a new car. They've gone on their family holiday, but the loan is not seeing, you're not hearing anything. And you're struggling to now, why are you not able to deal with this? All right? And as I said, the thing is, what's the second part of that step 1 is, but how is it important? Your family is missing out because they can't go on holiday. It's money that you've allocated for that. So now you go a bit deeper in step 2 of that. This is now what you're doing in your own time. You're going to have, and your table host will manage it for you. Is maybe you are struggling to have a conversation. Why? Because you don't like conflict and you overthink things. And then again, your question that you might ask for your group is to say, how would you help me to face this issue with my friend? How do I raise this issue? How do I resolve it? That's an example of step 1. Okay. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes now. So 3 minutes, table hosts, for step 1. And another 2 minutes for step 2. So that after 5 minutes, we get to a point where we can go into step 2, which is step 3 step 3, which then you will have about 10 minutes where the table host, where you will share your problem statements with each other. You might not all get an opportunity to share. I'll go into a bit more detail there. And then lastly, the longest part of it is the table hosts among you. The leader's going to select one problem statement. And then we're going to do the final portion of this resolution part of the problem solving, is where you guys can now interact with each other and ask deeper questions and so forth and come up with some problem solving. The group now resolving one issue that was highlighted. All right, so we're going to do the first 2 steps. Table hosts, please start your timers, and I will just come back after 5 minutes. So let's do that. Enjoy. Okay, that's it. So we're going to go into step 3 now. Table hosts, 10 minutes. Everyone give each one 90 seconds to give the feedback. And as table host, you can ask some probing questions, all right, so that you can get a bit more clarity. Because remember, table host, after the 10 minutes, you will choose one that we then go into a solution to, which is the last step. All right, so you've got 10 minutes. Let's try and get through everybody. But yes, go for it and listen to everybody's main problem statements. Thanks. Okay, let's get to the last part, which consists of 4 pieces. And this is where you need table hosts, you need to keep things under control, all right? Because why? The first thing we want to do is we immediately want to throw out solutions. We want to throw out solutions, okay? So there's 4 steps, take about 5 minutes each. The first one is the one that you've selected now, host or a leader. Take 5 minutes to provide that person to give more context to what the issue is, all right? What is the problem? What's the main problem statement? Again, try to prevent anybody that wants to provide a solution, stop. Say, no, we are trying to understand, to dig deeper and deeper and deeper to get to the real issue. Because often we have a high-level statement or a problem question, but we don't have the detail yet. That's the first step. The second step after 5 minutes is then to say, okay, step B is further now there's clarifying questions, all right? Again, still not solutions. Now the people around, the first point A is the person with the problem is speaking, all right? The second one is the people now around the table can ask some deeper questions for the next 5 minutes. Again, please don't go into solution mode. You want to get to the bottom of the issue. And then the third one is where the longer time starts. There you have about 10 to 13 minutes. We will time you where you can start suggesting solutions. What is maybe the answer to the problem? Table hosts again. Can you just facilitate that? There's always one who would like to dominate the conversation. Give everybody an opportunity. Go around, facilitate that, and then we'll come back and close after that. All right. Good. Let's start.
Good. So we hope that this discussion and consulting session was fruitful for the person which was chosen to share the issue in the group. So yeah, that it brings us to the end of our session. But I think, take that book with you. And it's yours, right? You don't have to leave it behind. Take it with you, go through it again, apply this. Like we said in the beginning, we want you to have a valuable tool that you can use into the future. So please take that with you, review the content. If there's any questions, you can just email the email address, our leadership email address at Highway Church. And we can reach out to you to answer anything that you might still know. What I want to do now is quickly just do a bit of a feedback, if you don't mind. I want to just ask one person of each table to just say one thing that you got out of today. So if you don't mind, I'll come around and then we can just share a bit of feedback with the broader group as well. So we'll start here. All right, well, skip here. You can decide still. And then,
Good morning, everyone. I think my biggest takeaway, and maybe on behalf of the group, is sometimes just removing the emotion out of it and really looking at what we need to be measuring, and actually doing something about the problem. So I think on our table we had 3 silent approaches where we just cut ourselves off, and we had 1 direct, and sometimes you have to find that middle ground. Both of them aiming to solve the issue, and the longer we put it off, the bigger that issue grows. So yeah, it's about really just finding the way to address that problem and get out of your comfort zone to make sure that you're actually finding that solution, because at the end of the day, it just gets worse the longer we look at it.
If only you guys could hear what they're saying to me here. I think for us, firstly, thank you to our partners that invited us here. My first thought was, yes, this is early, 6:30. But we got here, and the session was quite fruitful. It allowed us to interact and the 4-step approach that we did now in terms of solving a problem. One of the valuable inputs was we very quickly to want to rush to a solution. And sometimes you need to take a step back and try to get as much information around what it is that you're dealing with before you start to solve the problem. And when you solve the problem, try and stay away from things that can flare up emotions. Look only at the facts and what the best way may be in getting to that solution. So that was very valuable for this table. Thank you.
Yeah, good. So I think firstly for us, it's just amazing that we as a team, as a business, can get together and speak about certain things, which is amazing. And even praying into things and even our challenges in our business, we can talk over and pray over, which is great. And I think crucial conversations, I think it's very important for us as a business to have good relationships with our clients and suppliers, and even in our business itself. And it's just a good tool that we can use to have better conversations, better relationships, even building bridges with like some of our suppliers here. It's great to have that in future when there arises some issues, we can resolve it in a much better way.
Hi everyone. What I have learned in today's session is I've learned a lot more about what I need to work on. Also, a couple of ways to sort issues out. Yeah.
Well done.
Hi, so I think the feedback from our table in terms of takeaways was, before you have that conversation, just be clear on what are you trying to achieve. So just take a breath. I know they said this in the talk, but anyway, this is the keys. Be clear about what your goal or objective of actually engaging in that conversation is. And then check your assumptions. I think that was what we were saying here, hey? And then also just, it does take some courage to just go in and have that conversation, especially if you're not the kind of person who initially wants to engage in a bit of conflict. So I think those are our key takeaways: objective, assumptions, and take the courage. Okay? Miss anything? Cool. Thanks.
Hi everyone. So our table, we operate in an environment that is quite emotionally intense, and there's two things that stood out, and the one is it's not two people against each other, it's two people against the problem. That thought. And the second one is the emotions and expectations connection. So when you start feeling emotions, ask yourself what expectation's been affected. And when you see someone in a conversation reacting, like, be conscious of their expectation. And if you can manage that, the conversations will be better. Thanks.
Good morning. Our takeaway is search your heart, make sure of your motivation, and be honest.
Morning. So I realized this morning that I have to have a few crucial conversations in the coming week. Just realized how badly things can snowball when we don't have these conversations. So yeah, I have a tough week ahead. Other than that, our table, we just, we were reminded that in our industry is quite a bit different than, or industries are different than your normal 9-to-5 corporate industry. We're all creatives. And when it comes to wise counsel, we need to know who to speak to, what about what. So, yeah, maybe just a nice reminder for all of us.
Morning, everyone. So my group's key takeaway was that it's worth having the conversation because ultimately you want to maintain the relationship. Usually it's hard when you go through like a certain type of conflict with someone, and it's just like we were reminded today that you need to ask questions. Sometimes you need to have that conversation because that can be the only underlying issue that can hinder you from further progressing. So, yeah.
Great. Yeah, some good feedback. So keep talking to one another about this topic. I want to say that this session concludes our Business and Leadership Forum for this year. But we will be sending out dates soon for next year. Our next topic is going to be Seasons of Leadership. Basically what that topic will cover is really there's a natural progression as a leader through time, like seasons. And each of those seasons actually brings opportunities, but also challenges. And we'll be working through that as well. So please register for the next one. You all will receive individual emails on the details of that. And then also watch the marketing on our church website, as well as on our Facebook pages and so forth. So yeah, that's it. Before we go, I want to thank the team that's helped set all of this up. Thank you for the guys in the sound. Thank you for the guys that did the videos. And lastly, as well, we have one person that joined us out of Mauritius. So thank you for the guys that actually broadcasted this over the water as well. Thank you. Enjoy your Friday. We'll see you soon.